Hey, welcome back. It's Noel Mathias from Mortgage 360, and I'm going to acknowledge it right out of the gate. I screwed up on the last video. I didn't give you guys all the information that you needed, so I'm going to clarify that at the end of the video today. But I also want to talk about what you can expect from the upcoming federal budget and what further changes you can expect in the mortgage market in addition to OSFI's changes to the stress tests that were announced last week. But before we get into it, do me that favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, please hit that like button so more people like you can see this video. Don't forget about our race to 10,000 subscribers, where one lucky winner is going to win their rent or mortgage payment for a month just for subscribing to this channel. It's free, it's easy, it's definitely worth it. And thank you to the 4,000 new subscribers in the last 28 days and to the 4,500 other subscribers who have been with me from the beginning or at some point in between. I appreciate each and every one of you. If you haven't subscribed already, go ahead, hit that subscribe button to be entered to win that free monthly mortgage payment. The definitive guide on how to manage your credit, product, penalty, price in that order. It's never been more important to get your mortgage right. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's discuss what's going on in the mortgage world right now. And let's start by talking about what you can expect from the upcoming federal budget with respect to changes in the mortgage industry, because that OSFI stress test change, that Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions change last week, that was made by the regulator, and it had everything to do with mortgages that were uninsured. So mortgages where more than 20% down payment was being put down. And basically the gist of it was the stress test is moving from having to qualify at 4.89% to 5.25%. And that change is, I think, very much prudent. It only changes the market by about 4%. So what you would qualify for only changes by about 4%. So in $1 million market, that reduces the qualifying amount by about $40,000. In a $400,000 or $500,000 market, it's substantially less, obviously $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, which, I mean, that's the difference that can be negotiated in the price of a contract. So not a huge change, but it was obviously it only applied to uninsured borrowers. I think that you can expect that that change is going to be applied for insured mortgages in the very near future when the federal government releases their budget. And if you go and you take a look at my favorite website, BNN Bloomberg, the headline today is Trudeau likely just getting started in bid to ease a housing fever. And obviously the finance minister is the person who is in charge of making these stress test changes for insured mortgages. And I'm going to guess that it is going to be made in line with the changes that OSFI made. So that's the first thing you can change. The other thing first thing you can expect, sorry. The other thing I think you can expect, and this is coming from comments that we have seen come out of different Liberal MPs, is that you can likely expect that there's going to be some sort of change that is targeted at either speculators or foreign speculators. And I don't know what that looks like from the perspective of investors in Canada, but I'm guessing that there's going to be some sort of change to the exemptions for investors on capital gains exemptions. So in other words, I think right now they have some sort of a tax exemption. I believe it's you only pay capital gains on 50% of the capital gains, you only pay taxes on 50% of the capital gains. I think you can expect that going forward, you're going to have to pay taxes on the full capital gains, but we'll see when the budget comes out. Obviously, they're going to target international investors. That is a given. Expect that at some point, in some way, shape, or form, there's going to be some sort of national tax on people who are coming in from outside the country to invest in Canadian real estate. So, now, moving on from there, I think one of the best articles that I've seen in the last couple of weeks, and one of the best suggestions, comes out of Scotiabank. They are suggesting that they are going to assist in doing whatever they can to help encourage the supply of real estate. Now, here's what the reality is the reality is we've had a change in preferences to bigger properties, to properties with more space, and there's not enough supply of those properties. That's why you're seeing a run up in property values on $1 million plus homes, is because people are flocking to those. So what Scotia is suggesting, and what they are hoping that the government will do, and what they're supporting the government in doing, is trying to increase the supply of housing in Canada to bring the values down, because there's no switch, there's no trigger that somebody can flip that will help bring housing prices back to reasonable levels, at least what people expect reasonable levels to be. You can't just, flip a switch and not affect the people who have just bought houses, or affect the people who have tens 10 to 20 to 30 years worth of equity gains. So what you have to do is you have to approach it from the other side, which is the supply side. Instead of trying to turn off demand, we need to increase supply so it meets demand in the middle and therefore create some stability in prices over the long term. So another thing that I think you can expect coming up out of the federal government is that you will see some sort of incentive towards construction and building more houses, whether it's rental housing, whether it is owner occupied housing, or just in support of builders who are building houses, which I think is probably timely and prudent given the increase in costs of building materials and whatnot. And I think that should be where government policy is focusing right now, is on how do we create more supply of the houses that are in demand so that the values come back and stop going up at such an excessive level. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of this video that I made a mistake in yesterday's video. It was kind of a mistake. I'm going to own it, even though it wasn't really that big of a mistake, but it was pointed out in the comments by a bunch of people that the numbers with respect to sales activity was reflective of basically March last year, when the sales activity had basically stopped due to the pandemic. And, it's interesting because for myself, as an economist, I'm always looking at the data and what the mistakes in the data are, what the data may misrepresent. And when I look at the numbers for a mortgage company every single month, basically what we do in March is reflected in April and May. So in our March numbers for our mortgage company last year were normal, and then April and May were down because the transactions, the sales that happened in March or the lack of sales that happened in March due to the lockdowns didn't actually reflect in our numbers until later on in the year. But for real estate boards, they look at sales on the day that the contract is signed and firmed up, not on the day that the deal actually closes. So when we looked at those sales numbers and we saw 157% increase in sales over last year, that number very well could have been misleading. In fact, it was to a certain extent misleading, which was pointed out by a bunch of the commenters, and that was pointed out correctly. However, it doesn't change the fact that when you look at the numbers, and I'm going to point out both CREB, the Calgary Real Estate Boards, and Vancouver's assessment of this. When you look at the numbers, the sales figures were still excessively high, even compared to 2019, 2018, 2017. So the reason I bring this up is I want to make sure that it's clear that yes, while the numbers are probably excessively high compared to March of last year, they're also still high compared to previous years. If you look at Calgary's market, for example, where the economists at the Calgary Real Estate Board and Marie Larry, who coincidentally has took her economics degree at the University of Calgary, same as I did. She pointed out that 1 year later, it is not a surprise that March sales in 2021 were higher than in 2020. However, at 2,903 sales, this was still the highest March total since 2007. So yes, well, that number seemed like an increase of sales by 157%, seemed like it was extremely high. It was still very much higher than the last 14 years. So yes, commenters, you're absolutely correct in saying that these numbers were a little bit misleading. However, the numbers with respect to it still being one of the busiest years in real estate history are not incorrect. And the big thing and what we're really looking at when we do our real estate update is we're looking at sales partially, but what we're really looking at is we're looking at the increases in values and where the values were compared to the previous year and the year before that and the year before that. And one thing that you can say consistently across the country is that housing values are higher now than they have ever been in history. Just look at Toronto, who hadn't had average housing prices above $1 million until 2 months ago, and now is pushing $1.1 million. The sales data being skewed doesn't really matter when you look at it from the perspective of the housing prices. The housing prices have gained a significant amount of dollar value in the last few months, and that is absolutely reflected in the numbers. And then if you go and you look at, this is the Vancouver Real Estate Board, they had similar sort of commentary. Yes, last month's numbers were 126% over what they were the year prior. However, last month's sales were, and I'll move this up on the screen so you guys can see it easier. Last month's sales were 72.2% above the 10-year March sales average, and is the highest monthly sales total ever recorded in the region. So yes, while that 126% over last year's in sales numbers is exaggerated because of the lockdowns, it still doesn't change the fact that this was the highest level of total sales ever recorded in the region. So thank you to the commenters for holding me accountable and making sure they pointed out that those sales numbers were extreme and a little bit misleading. But the gist of the video still remains that sales activity was the highest that has been in pretty much every market across Canada in a very, very, very long time, if not ever. Housing prices are the highest that they have ever been. Expect that the low interest rates are basically us borrowing the demand from the future and having those purchases made now instead of in 2022, 2023, 2024. And that you can probably expect that, yes, there's going to be a little bit more of a run up. At some point, this is going to flatten out probably near the fall and maybe even have a little bit of a dip. But my guess is, and this is for anybody who is thinking about waiting this out until there's a crash, when you look at the way that mortgages are underwritten and you look at the way people have to qualify for mortgages and you look at the incentivization that's being put back into the market, and that the fact that jobs should start to come back once the vaccinations take effect, well, you can pretty much rest assured, in my opinion, that housing prices are going to remain pretty flat. And if you're waiting for the crash, you're probably going to continue to wait for at least several years until we have some other sort of crisis, if we ever have that sort of crisis in housing. So if you're looking to get into the market, probably a good time to do it now. One last thing, I've mentioned this on the previous videos, we love the fact that we get the opportunity to help as many people as possible via our mortgage company, Mortgage 360. We also understand that certain people have maybe already started the process with a broker. Perhaps they're already working with their bank, or maybe they just want to do it themselves. So part of my why is to make sure I inspire people to thrive and give back. And part of me giving back is making sure that the people who don't use us at Mortgage 360 have the opportunity to get the information that our clients would get. So we put together a course. It's called Secrets to Getting the Lowest Interest Rate. It covers how to negotiate with a bank, how to negotiate with a broker. It covers how much margin is available in a mortgage to be negotiated, what things are negotiable, things like appraisals, things like home inspections, what you can ask for, what you can't. I talk about landmines and issues that are in particular mortgages. I talk about the drawbacks of discount mortgages, big bank penalties, things that you need to be conscious of when you're negotiating your mortgage. And the reason I've done all this is so that everybody has access to the information. And I've priced it at such a low price that it is easily accessible for anybody who's getting a mortgage. And my commitment to you is that if you take that course and you buy that course, and it's basically 14 videos, so it's very easy. It takes less than an hour to go through. But my commitment to you is that you will get back 10 to 20, if not 30 to 40 times the amount that you pay in interest savings over the course of your mortgage, just by having the access to the information that I provide in that course. So I'm going to put a discount code in the comment section below. It will be YouTube. Go ahead, click the link in the description below, put in that discount code. You will get 50% off the already discounted price. And if you found this video useful, do me that favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and hit that like button so more people like you can see this video. Don't forget about a race to 10,000 subscribers, and we'll see you on the next video. Cheers.